Right. Good morning, everybody. For those people who don't know who I am, I'm Matt Scotney, and I'm a member here at Slough Baptist Church. As Isaac has been talking about, we're continuing our theme of living for God, and this today, we're looking at Romans 4, which has to be said is perhaps not the easiest passage in the world to understand, and perhaps it's going to take a bit of unpacking. But before we do that, we're going to go back to that question that Isaac asked as the little people went out. What have you had to earn? There are many, many things that we've had to earn. Toby, if I could have the next slide, please. We might have to earn something like Star of the Week. How many people have ever tried to earn Star of the Week to have been the best in the class? There we go. A few of us have had to earn Star of the Week. Maybe you're in the scouting movement or the guide movement or in the boys brigade and you've had to earn a badge. How many people have ever had to earn badges? Very good. Maybe it's money to pay the bills. Anybody in the room ever had to earn some pennies to pay bills? There's definitely a few of us. Maybe you had to work hard because you wanted that promotion. You were desperate to get to the next level. Anybody willing to admit to working hard to get a promotion? There's a few people. Very good. Maybe it's the ultimate. Maybe you've had to work hard for love. Anybody had to work hard for love? Yeah, absolutely. Chasing the person of your dreams down. Desperately trying to do all sorts of things. Sometimes we have to work hard for things. And I've got a very, very good example of having to work hard. Now, many of you probably know my youngest son, Joe, he is training to be an elite gymnast. In fact, he is currently in the process of training to hopefully join the European Championships with the Great Britain squad in middle of next year. I've forgotten the time. That's what he's training to do. And now he's bigger than me and he's going to really beat me up later, so I probably shouldn't have said that. But anyway, so Joe's earning something. He's desperately trying to work hard for something. And at the same time as Joe's at gymnastics, I try and earn something. I spend a lot of time at gymnastics, and there's a cafe at gymnastics. It's a very nice cafe, and on a Saturday morning, they serve bacon sandwiches. Not just bacon sandwiches. They serve bacon sandwiches on granary bread, which I have to say is the best bread in the world, with proper butter that I'm not supposed to eat, but I absolutely adore, and to top it off, proper ketchup. And we all know what proper ketchup is, don't we? Absolutely. I won't say what it is, but essentially, that's what I would love every single week. But you can tell I quite like bacon sandwiches, so I have to earn my bacon sandwiches. So every Saturday, I crack on for an hour's walk or an hour's swim, depending on the weather, depending on timings, and I earn my bacon sandwich. However, the other Saturday morning, I was feeling a bit rubbish. So I decided to forego the bacon sandwich and just have my normal peanut butter on toast, which is very nice, and I love peanut butter on toast, but it is not the same as a bacon sandwich in any way, shape, or form. So on this particular Saturday, I sat myself down, got myself ready to be there. I can't do that, having just done that song. And we sat there, and the cafe opens, and I sit there for about 3 hours. So when the cafe finally opens, I'm not normally the first in the queue because I let it die down, but essentially you're there at the shop. And I said to the lady behind the cafe, who knows me quite well, please may I have a black coffee? Because, of course, there is only one way to serve a coffee, and that is black. And she said, of course you can. And she gave me my black coffee. And she said, what about your bacon sandwich? And this thing, there were three things that occurred to me at this precise moment in time. One, I spend way too long in the coffee shop if the lady knows my order. Two, I'm really quite predictable if she knows what I'm going to have before I've even ordered it. And number three, bacon sandwiches on a Saturday morning. Talk about temptation. Absolutely nuts. However, I decided that I was not going to give in. I forgoed the bacon sandwich, and despite the fact it would have been far easier to give in, I decided not to give in. So why is it relevant today's passage? Well, despite the fact it might not be the easiest passage in the world to understand, it very, very clearly says we can't earn our salvation. We cannot earn salvation. Next slide, please, Toby. So what in the world is salvation. Salvation is the act of saving human beings from sin and its consequences, which include death and separation from God. And it's by Christ's death and resurrection and the justifying entitled by this salvation. In other words, salvation is the fact that we can be saved. Fantastic. But why do I need saving, I hear you ask? Well, in order to think about that, we need to go back to the very beginning of the world. When God created the world, it was perfect in every way, shape, and form. And God created Adam and Eve, the first humans, and they were perfect as well. And they walked with God. This is an illustration. I am aware that God is not this size and humans are not this size. So just go with it for the moment. So God and humans walked together in the Garden of Eden. And then something happened. Sin came into the world. And if we could bottle up sin, this is what it might look like. Yucky, brown, and horrible. And at the point that sin came into the world, God and humans and us were separated. God is perfect in every way, shape, or form. We were perfect. And when sin came into the world, do you know what happened? Oh, too close to a microphone. We got contaminated. All the things that we did wrong, all the things that we say, all the things that we think, separate us from God. And as a result, there is a massive gap. In my mind, the gap was going to be bigger, but the piano's on the stage. So this is a really, really big gap. And there's nothing that we can do to get from this circle into that circle. It doesn't matter how much I jump. It doesn't matter how much I crawl or run or whatever I do. In fact, there is nothing I can do to get from that circle to this circle. But I don't know about you guys, but I'm a bit of a fixer, and I like to fix things. So next slide, please, Toby. So maybe we think about getting to heaven is, that's sin. Sorry, next slide again. So sin is all the things that we do, all the things that we say, and all the things that we think that we do wrong. But maybe we try and earn our place in heaven. How many people go to coffee shops? How many people have got an app or a card, a loyalty card? Maybe we think about heaven and getting to heaven a bit like the loyalty card. Cool, I went to church. Epic. Stamp. I listened to the sermon without falling asleep. Very good. Stamp. I prayed out loud in Sunday school. Very impressive. Stamp. I helped out with the tea and the coffee. Is that a stamp? Yeah, okay. A stamp. Maybe you don't come to church. Maybe this is the first time you're in church, but maybe it's okay because you've got a loyalty card to get into heaven as well. And perhaps for you guys, maybe you visited your neighbour. You helped a friend who needed it. Maybe you gave money to the poor. Another stamp. And you're relying on the fact that when we die, because ultimately we are all going to die, when we face God, we're going to go, "Hi God, I'm here, and here is my loyalty card. I can come into heaven." And God is going to say, "No, you can't." Because when we get into heaven, we cannot earn our salvation. And it's very clear from today's passage. Toby, if I could have this one. Thank you. It says in Romans 4, what shall we say then of Adam, of Abraham even, the father of our race? What was his experience? If he was put right with God by the things he did, he would have had something to boast about, but not in God's sight. The scriptures say Abraham believed God, and because of his faith, God accepted him as righteousness. So if we can't earn our way to heaven, if we can't earn getting to heaven, how in the world can we cross this gap? How can we be with our Creator? So we just had part one of the talks, and we looked at the fact that no matter how many stamps we get on our loyalty card, we cannot get ourselves into heaven. We cannot cross the massive gap. We cannot get rid of sin. So we're stuck over here. But let's go back to today's passage. Next slide, please, Toby. So, in the passage, it's Romans 4, verse 20 to 22, it says, his, and that's Abraham's, faith did not leave him, and he did not doubt God's promise. His faith filled him with power, and he gave praise to God. He was absolutely sure that God would be able to do what he had promised. That is why Abraham, through faith, was accepted righteous by God. So instead of trying to earn salvation, and remember, salvation is that big word for being saved. Salvation is the big word for getting us from this circle into that circle, to be with God, our Creator. Next slide, please. So, how do we fix this? How does God fix it? So, that's where the Bible comes in. The Bible is God's rescue plan. The Bible tells us how God created the world and how it went horribly, horribly wrong. He knew that Adam and Eve were going to do their own thing. He knew they were going to go their own way. God also knows that we're going to sin. He knows that we're going to do things that we shouldn't do. We're going to think things that we shouldn't do. We're going to say things that we shouldn't do. We can't help it. It's a little bit like if I say to you, don't think about a pink elephant. What are you thinking about? A pink elephant. And why? Because we want our own way. It doesn't matter whether you're 2 years old and you have a hissy fit when your mum and dad say, you can't do that, or no, and they lay on the floor and they kick their feet. It doesn't matter whether you're 10 or perhaps 7 or 12. And your mum or your dad or your carer say, time to turn off the television. And you're like, I don't want to turn off the television. It is not fair. Or what about when you're a teenager and you're there on your phone, you're messaging your boyfriend or your girlfriend, and your parents say, it's time to put that down and go and do your homework. And what do? You have a hissy fit. I don't want to do my homework. I hate you. No offense. Not that you've ever done that, but you know. Oh, for those people who don't know, Isaac is in fact my son. Or maybe you're an adult and it's all a little bit more dignified. When we don't get our own way, maybe we do the silent thing. I am not going to talk to you. Or I'm not going to talk to my wife who's in the middle of the back row. Or maybe your co-workers and you just decide you're going to ignore all their emails. You know, I don't like them, I don't want to talk to you. Or perhaps you're a little bit more like me and have a hissy fit anyway and it's completely undignified, and who wants to be a grown-up anyway? We all want our own way. We want to do it our way. So what is God's rescue plan? Next slide, please, Toby. Well, of course, God's rescue plan is the absolute cool Sunday school answer. It is, in fact, Jesus. Jesus is the answer. Jesus came down to earth. He was born as a baby, which is what we celebrate at Christmas. He came down, he lived on the earth, but unlike us humans, he was perfect. He was God in human form, and he was perfect. The people at the time didn't like it. They didn't like what he was saying, so they decided they were going to kill him. And when they killed him, do you know what happened? Jesus took the sin from us. He took all that bad stuff away. But it wasn't just all the bad stuff that we had done. Jesus, in fact, conquered death. 3 days later, Jesus rose from the grave. He came back to life. And he not only defeated the sin that had gone, he defeated all sin. He removed sin from the world. And the consequence of that is that we can now live with God. The hoops, if you will, are joined back together. We have a direct connection with God. We don't have to wait for a particular day or time. We can pray to God. We can say, Lord, please help me anytime. We are saved. as Jesus died, the curtain in the temple was torn in two. We were no longer separated from God. Toby, if I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. It says in verses 24 to 25, they were written for all of us who accepted as righteous, who believed in him, who raised Jesus our Lord from death. Because of the sins he was given over to die, he was raised to life in order to put us right with God. Jesus rescued us. Next slide, please. Jesus took away the sins of the world. Sin has been removed completely, forever, once and for all. So what do I need to do to earn salvation? What do we need to do to earn salvation? Next slide, please, Toby. Thank you. Nothing. We cannot earn salvation. It's very, very clear that we can't earn salvation. Instead, it is a gift from God. And it says a little further on in Romans 9, verses 1 to 2, Romans chapter 10, verses 9 to 10. If you confess that Jesus is Lord and believe that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is by our faith that we are put right with God. It is by our confession that we are saved. So if we admit we have sinned, if we admit we have done things wrong, if we admit that we have fallen short of God's standards, God will forgive us. So how can we be saved? I'm going to steal what John said for those people who were here last week. It's as simple as A, B, C. Admit that we've sinned and fallen short of God. Believe that Jesus died on the cross and in doing so took away all of my sins. And choose to follow Jesus, to put Jesus first, to put God first in our lives. Whether this is your first time in church, whether you've never heard this before, whether you've been here 3 or 4 times, 10 or 12 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, the message is the same. Next slide, please, Toby. We cannot earn our salvation. We cannot get enough stamps in our card to move from one circle to the other. It is purely down to the fact that Jesus died on the cross. It is a gift from God to us. And all we have to do is accept it. My challenge to you is, as we move on with the rest of our service, are you willing to accept that gift?